Did you know that I am literally an archer in real life? Seriously, I'm certified to be able to teach people if I so want. I have a certificate and everything. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel.
Unicorn Overlord.
Hello everyone. If you enjoy my coverage of Unicorn Overlord, discussions of classes and strategy, coverage of gaming news, or any of my other type of content in general, a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. So what is the topic of the day today? Well, coming by popular request, we're discussing archers, all of the various types of archers that you can find in Unicorn Overlord. That would be rangers slash snipers, arbalists slash shield shooters, Elven Archers, Featherbows, and then of course Yunifi's unique class, Snow Ranger. Each of these has a different role that they aim to fill, and we're going to talk about each of those roles, what types of units you may want to use them in, and what makes each of these classes special. This is not a full in-depth breakdown of each class on its own, but more a discussion of how archers in the game work and where you might want to use one over the other. We'll of course start with sniper slash hunter, sorry, not ranger, force of habit, and what they have to offer. Snipers are your archetypical ranged damage crit-based class. Out of all of the archers in the game, these are the ones most focused on dealing single target, maybe two target damage, and to dealing as much as possible, while also sniping priority targets like squishy mages and flyers. If you're familiar with ranged DPS classes in pretty much any other RPG on Earth, then you are probably familiar with what snipers bring to the table. They've got good physical attack, surprisingly strong magical defense, which again makes them very good anti-mage units, excellent accuracy, and very, very strong crit rate, helping them lean into their preferred role very well. They are effective against flying units like Griffin Knights, they're effective against dodge units like Thieves because they can give themselves a guaranteed chance to hit, and of course they have the assist type range, which pretty much all of these classes have. As far as their skills are concerned, it's all about the damage. Single shot, attack a single enemy, deals damage. Dual shot, attacks two enemies, deals damage. Row shot, attacks a row of enemies, deals damage. Are you seeing a pattern here? As far as their actual base skills are concerned, it's literally just about dealing damage. We're not looking at status effects, we're not looking at afflictions, we're not looking at any other fancy effects than just raw damage. And their passive skills support that as well. Eagle Eye gives them a guaranteed chance to hit, makes their next hit True Strike, which is great, again, for dealing with thieves, flyers, things like that. Pursuit allows them to follow up ally attacks to get even more damage out there. And Aerial Snipe allows you to counterattack a single enemy when you get attacked, and it deals a ton of extra damage versus flyers. These guys just want to snipe, 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 shoot, 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 and hit as hard as possible, as fast as possible. As such, you really want them in a squad that already has good support capabilities. Something with a tank, something with support healing, maybe some sort of buff unit to help them deal extra damage, things like that. Snipers can't do any of that on their own. Due to their dedicated damage output as well, they're a very good choice for things like Arrow Rain, which is actually how I happen to be using this sniper Nils. Attack all enemies, user cannot evade or use passive skills while charging. This deals massive damage. This is one of my favorite charge attacks in the game. It's great against flying units, things like that. And seeing as how your other archers are going to have other things that they want to do other than just sitting there charging up a big attack, snipers with their crit and their physical damage are going to be a good choice for this. This does, of course, come from the Trapper's Warbow. Anything else that gives you extra damaging attacks or attacks that do other types of things are also a good choice for snipers since their normal attack options are pretty limited. Things like Healing Hunter are great, Rapid Shot off the bow of swiftness, all that type of good stuff, Magic Shatter. Anything that is going to give you a little bit more variety for your snipers is going to be good and is going to make good use of their strong natural stats. I would recommend putting them in a squad with something like a Legionnaire or a Fighter or Hunter, things like that, as well as maybe something that is going to buff their attack, like a support unit equipped with a Dancer's Bracelet or the like to get the most out of their capabilities. They'll find their best utility as an anti-evade unit, and I do highly recommend them for particularly specialized squads. They also make a very decent frontliner for a ranged physical support squad, although units like the Shieldshooter are probably going to be a little bit better due to their naturally higher physical attack. Compared to every other archer in the game that isn't Yunifi, because as a unique class she's super busted, hunters are by far going to be your primary damage unit when it comes to archers, and you can absolutely use them as the primary DPS of a squad. Get them a little bit of support, get them a little bit of cover, and watch them tear, especially against that squishy backline. Moving on to Arbalists slash Shieldshooters, this is where we get a lot more variety in our Archer capabilities. Yes, they have a lot of the same effectiveness. They're good against flying foes like Griffin Knights, but you'll note, compared to the Sniper, they're not good against Thieves, and that's because they don't have the ability to grant themselves a guaranteed chance to hit. Instead, the Shieldshooter actually does a good mix of damage, tanking, and healing. They're probably the single most versatile Archer in the game. Once an Arbalist promotes to Shieldshooter, they do get a great shield slot, which allows them to very easily hold on the front line, and the abilities that they get do tend to complement that. Things like Heavy Bolt, that actually gives them double the damage if they're in the front row, should give you an idea of where you want to place these tanky archers. They do have unique access to things like crossbows, giving you access to things like the Woodpecker, giving you an attack that hits a single target with multiple hits, 50 damage a shot. Each of those can crit, and you also get plus 30% critical damage and stun immunity off of this. Only shield shooters can wield crossbows like this. Same thing for the Galleon crossbow. Gives you Harpoon Bolt, attack a column of enemies with a piercing strike, plus accuracy, plus crit damage. It's very solid stuff. Now, the thing to keep in mind with shield shooters, though, is they don't actually have a good crit rate. So while you are getting bonus crit damage off of certain crossbows, you do need to give them an ability that is going to allow them to crit very successfully. Something like a Soldier with Keen Call. That would be quite nice paired with a shield shooter. Their other notable stats, of course, include their physical attack and their accuracy, as well as their guard rate, which synergizes quite well with those great shields that you can have them wield. Their skills, as mentioned, are spread fairly evenly across damage, support, tanking, etc. They do get things like Power Bolt and Heavy Bolt that just deal good raw damage to the front or the back line. Toxic Bolt, allowing you to put poison on something if you're doing a poison comp or just want the ability to punch through some armor with poison, things like that. This is a great option. They have the Medical Aid ability, allowing them to restore a decent amount of HP to a row of allies, increased if they are on low health, which is awesome. Quick Reload allows them to do some quick follow-up attacks, and their Aid Cover ability covers an ally with a medium guard and restores 25% HP to that ally. This is a great tanking and support option. So you can see here, these are very versatile. Compared to something like a Sniper, you have a lot more options on what type of squad you can slot a shield shooter into based on what your other needs are. Do you need a tank? Shield shooter can do it. Maybe not as good as something like a Legionnaire, but they can certainly get the job done. Do you need some healing? A shield shooter can do it. Maybe not as good as a cleric, but they can get the job done. Need some damage? They really do shine in that regard, and you don't need to worry too much about what other units you have in the squad. Like, shield shooters are going to compete, especially with something like Heavy Bolt. Highly, highly, highly recommend. Then, of course, their unique Valor skill, Smoke Bolt, does allow them to disable support attacks from enemies, which is just awesome. Absolutely cannot recommend this enough, especially on True Zenoiran. You really can't go wrong with putting a shield shooter in any given squad. If you aren't planning on having them use things like Heavy Bolt, you can put them in the back line and leave some other tankier units up front. However, due to their healing skills, you can maybe have something slightly less durable on the front line. A Doom Knight squad with a shield shooter in the back to be able to deal with flying units and heal up the Doom Knights. Certainly a good option. Conversely, going up front and having a Heavy Bolt build with some squishy units in the back line and maybe a co-tank like a Vanguard up front. Have the Vanguard and the shield shooter cover each other while your mages and other archers in the back line do some work. Also an excellent option. There's a lot that you can do with shield shooters, to the point that it almost makes it hard to recommend what squad they could go into, because they can really fit into pretty much any squad, which I do very much appreciate. If snipers are your primary DPS, your shield shooters are your Swiss Army knife. They're not the best at any one given thing, but they can fill any role very, very well. And that unique versatility that they have makes them pretty interesting as far as units are concerned. Highly recommend them. Moving on to Elven Archers. We've gone through damage, we've gone through Swiss Army knife. Now let's go to a pretty pure support type of unit. You can see in their stats, Elven Archers, not the best when it comes to attacking. Their physical attack is pretty poor. They do have good magical attack, but all of their skills are split between physical and magical, which does tend to hurt their damage a little bit. But they do have great magical defense, phenomenal accuracy, and very strong initiative. That initiative is nice because it does lean into their support capabilities. Their skills are as follows. They have Wind Arrow that just deals mixed physical and magical damage, and inflicts evasion -50, which can be handy if you have something like, say, a Berserker that has lower accuracy. You want to be able to land some good hits. Mystic Conferral adds magic damage of 50 potency to an ally's attacks, basically the same thing as a Witch. Icicle Arrow attacks 2 enemies and inflicts freeze, which is very strong, especially with their good initiative. They can freeze 2 enemies right off the bat. And then they have a variety of passive skills. Don't mind these 2 yellow ones down here. That's from their equipment that I have on them. The passive skill Quick Cure removes all debuffs from an ally and grants them immunity to one debuff, which is awesome. The Selfless Heal skill restores minor HP to all allies and removes all debuffs, but only activates after being healed, a build limitation that you do need to consider when you're using this class. And the Pure Field passive skill, which is possibly their strongest skill, activates at the start of a battle, grants all allies a buff that negates a single debuff. And then their Valor skill, Merciful Rain, conjures a AoE healing rain, which actually can heal very, very quickly. Having 10% HP restored every second stacks up really, really quickly, and if you can keep a unit within the range of the rain cloud for all 15 seconds, it's 150% healing. You could do some fights in there and just have them keep on healing through, and it is very, very efficient. Elven Archers are an extremely interesting class. They definitely are not great damage dealers, unlike your Sniper or even a decent damage dealer like a Shieldshooter is. They want to be leaning into their support skills much, much more. Being able to give allies extra damage through Mystic Conferral and allowing them to punch through armor is awesome. And then, as mentioned, Icicle Arrow being able to freeze 2 priority targets, maybe the enemies with the highest initiative, not a bad choice, is great. Then, of course, their suite of other just passive support skills are awesome. Removing debuffs is a huge benefit, especially later in the game where blinds and burns and stuns and all sorts of other ridiculous things. Physical defense, magical defense downs, nerfs to damage, all that type of good stuff you will want to be able to deal with, and Pure Field does let you do that. And as a start of battle ability, you get that buff guaranteed if you aren't rocking any other sort of activate at start of battle abilities. Now, they are a little bit more limited, though. Again, you're not looking at a level of healing equivalent to something like a Cleric, but if you have something that can trigger something like Selfless Heal, that is still a pretty decent amount of healing at the end of a fight. I like to use what I call my field medics, my rogues, equipped with a med kit that can allow them to target specifically our Elven Archer by targeting just Archer, having only her in the squad, and then she will then activate Selfless Heal and restore HP to the entire party. A nice little end of battle heal. Really, though, these are through and through support units. You can't rely on them as healers, but their ability to shut down certain types of enemies, their ability to buff your allies' attacks, and their ability to prevent them from being debuffed and give them restoration when they do get debuffed is awesome. You're going to want other major damage dealers in the squad, of course. I like things like various different cavalry, like Great Knights and Doom Knights. Flyers, like Wyvern Knights and Griffin Knights, do very much appreciate this, especially due to Mystic Conferral, giving their AoE abilities a lot more punch. Or even something like, say, a Berserker. Anything that is going to hit a number of enemies simultaneously is going to benefit greatly from Mystic Conferral. Similarly, anything that is really going to get shut down by debuffs, anything that really doesn't want to lose attack or defense, going to be great with an Elven Archer, or something that is going to be very susceptible to things like blinds, burns, etc. For their very strong support capabilities, Elven Archers are welcome in most squads, but unlike something like a Shieldshooter that can fit into pretty much any squad, or a Sniper, which any squad wants extra DPS, you do need to be a little bit more careful about where you put your Elven Archers, especially so that they can make use of things like Selfless Heal. Of course, their ability to equip other effects that are going to make them even better supporters, something like Scarlet's Ribbon to give them a quick heal, is very nice. And I do like to have more supporting abilities like Healing Hunter on them as well. They don't have the best physical attack, so they're not going to deal as much damage as they could with something like Healing Hunter. But at the same time, my Elven Archers do tend to have quite a lot of passive points so that they can use more support abilities. So having the ability to potentially snipe a quick, cheeky healer is not a bad thing by any means. Give them a tank, give them some DPS options, make sure they can trigger their Selfless Heal, and your Elven Archer is going to put in a ton of work. Moving on, we then have Featherbows, the last of the 4 generic archers, then we'll talk about Yunifi at the end. Featherbows are pretty wild. If your Elven Archer is going to be your ally support team, then the Featherbow is going to be your enemy debuff team. Their damage may not be the best, but their accuracy, evasion, and initiative are all phenomenal, especially as flying units. They're going to be very, very dodgy against ground-based units, and they're going to be very good at landing their hits on the enemy and getting them out early thanks to that high initiative. As far as their skills are concerned, they have the following. Delaying Shot hits an enemy 4 times for 25 potency per hit, inflicting initiative -20, which, again, can be pretty decent if there's a speedy enemy on the enemy side of the field. Saint's Shot attacks a single enemy, inflicts -1 passive point, and deals an additional -1 passive point to ground-based targets, which is the majority of targets in the game, so very nice, especially since as an archer you can have them target the back line, maybe destroy a healer or support unit's ability to actually do their job. And then the devastating Photon Arrow attacks 2 enemies, inflicts physical defense -50%, 50% and inflicts passive seal during the day. In a squad that's dealing a lot of physical damage, having the ability to hit potentially the 2 highest defense enemies on their board is going to be phenomenal. It's essentially a damage buff for your team while still dealing damage to the enemy. I love Photon Arrow. It's a ton of fun. As far as their passive skills are concerned, they have Aerial Pursuit, allows them to follow up attack a single enemy. Not the best thing, seeing as how their physical attack isn't the greatest, but it doesn't hurt to have some extra chip damage in there. Then, however, they have Tailwind, activates after using an active skill, grants a row of allies plus 10 initiative, and effect is doubled for flying targets, so slap a Featherbow in the backline where they should be, have your other backline units get an initiative buff, especially if they're flyers, like other angels, or something like a Griffin Knight or a Wyvern Knight, and this is likely to trigger at the very beginning of the fight, seeing as how your Featherbow, again, is going to have very strong initiative, so good support skill there. And then Shining Light, their true devastating ability, activates before an enemy uses an attack skill, inflicts blindness on a row of enemies. This is what makes Featherbows so devastating and so unique, and why I feel like they really can fit as an enemy debuff unit into pretty much any squad. Just the ability to have one enemy attack and go, huh, that's cute, and have them and all of their friends in their row no longer be able to land their attacks for a hit is just devastatingly brutal. I love this skill. If you've gone through Albion, you know how painful it can be to try and fight. It's extremely, extremely strong. And then combined with other things like Tailwind, boosting your own initiative, Photon Arrow, nerfing enemy defense, Saint's Shot, dropping enemy passive points, even one Featherbow in your unit can severely disrupt the enemy's battle plan. Then, of course, they have the Valor skill Delay that increases the wait time of an enemy unit by 5 seconds, can just slow them down, keep them from moving, make them easier to ambush, things like that. It's not like the most useful thing, but handy where it counts. So what type of unit do you want a Featherbow in? Generally speaking, again, you're going to want them in a physical-based squad, and preferably with other flyers, so you can make the most use of things like Photon Arrow and Tailwind. Tailwind, again, effect is doubled for flying targets, so slapping a Featherbow in the back line with maybe couple of Griffin Masters with some Aerial Smite action to crush rows of enemies, or maybe a couple Wyvern Masters so that they can deal big piercing damage to columns, or even just a bunch of other angels, maybe a couple Feather Swords, or a bunch more Feather Bows so that they can do even more stacking defense reduction, shots to reduce passive points, keep the enemy from basically having access to any of their passive skills. Also a very, very strong option. And then, of course, Photon Arrow, tanking enemy physical defense by 50%. I mean, hello, Great Knights, Doom Knights, Cell Swords / Lance Connects, like anything that wants to be dealing good physical damage, Sword Masters, hello, are all going to appreciate the enemy suddenly having half of their physical defense, probably at the start of the fight, because again, Featherbows tend to be very, very quickly. Magic-focused squads not going to be nearly as useful for, like, yeah, being able to make it so that enemies can't hit you with Shining Light is a good defensive option because of the blind, but other than that, you know, you're not getting as much synergy there, so I would focus more on physical-based squads and definitely try to crowbar a couple of extra flying units into the Featherbow's row, and then you will see just the truly best gains. Very, very fun class. Highly recommend. But again, a little bit more focused, similar to the Elven Archer, compared to the much more generalist Sniper and Shieldshooter. Finally, of course, we do have to talk about Yunifi. Yunifi is ridiculous. She's been largely discussed as one of the most broken characters in the game, and it is easy to see why. She's got middling physical attack, not great magical attack, but her accuracy, evasion, and crit rate are all through the roof, and she has pretty good initiative as well. That high evasion actually makes her a pretty decent candidate for a frontline archer, something that you can actually see here in this just kind of easy access squad that I have set up here, and she fulfills the role quite well. Notably, she is just as effective against Griffin Knights and Thieves as your snipers are. She can give herself True Strike, so she's very strong in that capability while also being able to be a frontline dodge tank. And of course, she also has a lot of other options as well. Let's look at Mystic Arrow. Attack a single enemy, deals an additional magic damage of 100 potency to armor targets. So now, suddenly, she's basically an Elven Archer that has magic attacks. She's a sniper because she can have True Strike on enemies, and she can also be a dodge tank, or just kind of a frontline tank in general, like a Shieldshooter. Wondering how people see her to be so busted yet? Well, let's look at her other abilities. Sonic Shaft. Attack a single enemy. Deals 100% of target's initiative in additional damage. This is an interesting one. Like, okay, so you can snipe a super speedy target like a Rogue or a Swordmaster, maybe even something like a Griffin Knight, things like that, and just deal a ton of extra damage to them. That seems pretty powerful, especially because it's like, doesn't seem to be based on their defense. It just hits them, which is pretty wild. Well, but how are you going to land that hit? Well, of course, they do have Eagle Eye, as previously mentioned. Makes their next attack a True Strike, so there you go. Any sort of dodge tank unit? Nope, not anymore, not with Yunifi around. Then, of course, she has Glacial Rain, her own charge ability. You know how your sniper needs to have a specific bow equipped to be able to have a big AoE charge attack? Well, not Yunifi. 60 physical potency, hit rate of 3, so 180 total damage, or potency anyway. 80% hit rate, but I mean, again, you can make it a True Strike with Eagle Eye. Ranged charge, attacks all enemies, inflicts freeze. So not only are you hitting everything for a lot of damage, with a pretty good crit rate, because Yunifi has a naturally very high crit rate, but also anything that survives gets frozen. So now the rest of your squad can just make easy pickings of them. Kind of wild, isn't it? But we're not done. We talked about Eagle Eye already. Let's talk about triple counter. Attacks after an enemy attacks with an active skill. Counterattack 3 enemies for 100 physical potency apiece. You know how you can have, like, something like Aerial Snipe over here on Sniper? Activates after an ally is hit by an attack. Counterattack a single enemy. 50 physical potency unless it's a flying target. What if you just do the same thing but hit 3 of them? Okay, yeah, that's pretty good. And then Snow White Strike. Activates after an ally attacks, follow-up attack a single enemy, inflicts freeze, and plus 100 potency versus frozen targets. So again, Pursuit, we have it built in. Slightly less damage, but it freezes. And it's extra potency versus other frozen targets. It's ridiculous. Yunifi may not have any direct support or enemy debuff capabilities like a Featherbow or an Elven Archer, but she makes up for that in just the raw damage that she's able to put out and the fact that she can at least freeze enemies to disrupt them. Yeah, it's not going to be constant blinds coming out, and yeah, she's not going to be able to protect her allies from debuffs or heal them, but like, do you need to when you can have a character that can potentially lock down the entire enemy board with one attack? I don't really think that you do, especially if you give her a good initiative boost, maybe something that's going to let her cast her Glacial Rain immediately. There's options here. There are a lot of options here. And that's to say nothing of her Valor skill Extra Assist that gives extra assist damage by 50% and negates stamina consumption for all allied units within range. So yeah, just get a free Arrow Storm from all of your ranged assist squads, speaking of snipers. And then Passive Snipe, decrease an enemy unit's starting passive points by 1, which can be pretty rude against certain boss squads. Like, for 3 Valor, it is pretty costly, but especially later in the game when you've got 5 or even 6 enemies in a squad, being able to take 5 or 6 passive points off of them can be hugely disruptive. So, I think it's easy to say that Yunifi can fit into any squad in the game. She's got the damage, she's got the enemy disruption, she's got the dodge tanking, she's got the True Strike. Like, anything that wants any of that wants Yunifi. And especially because you can be on the front line while still doing backline ranged archer things. It's truly, truly wild. Like, I don't even need to really go through what types of squads you would want to build with Yunifi because she's just good in all of them. Take my word for it. She's great. Finally, though, what if you don't want to have a specific unit that you slip just a sniper or just a shield shooter into? Well, let me tell you, this squad right here, it's not, like, optimized or anything, but this is actually a pretty good squad. Like, you have the capability to heal your Elven Archer with your Shield Shooter to then trigger Selfless Heal that's going to heal the entire party. You've got devastating direct target damage with a Sniper. You've got tanking and evade tanking with Yunifi the Snow Ranger and Josephine or any Shield Shooter up in the front line. You've got enemy debuffs, blinds, etc. with your Featherbow, while also being able to prevent debuffs on your team with your Elven Archer. You've got freezes, you've got poison, you've got guards, you've got like a bunch of follow-up attacks. It is a surprisingly effective squad for something comprised entirely of archers. And the best part is, since every single one of them has the assist type ranged, all of their assist attacks are going to be devastatingly powerful because each, of the same assist type in a squad boosts the damage of the assist attack. So this is actually a viable squad. If you're confused on how you want to use your archers, if all else fails, just slap all of them into one team and just maintain some class variety. Like, yeah, you don't necessarily want 5 snipers unless you're just using them for assist attacks. But if you want an all-rounder squad that can handle pretty much anything, this is not a bad option by any means. You can see them actually doing pretty damn well in this mock battle that I did prior to recording the video. It's pretty wild, so yeah, archers are awesome, man. I know there's a lot that they can do, and each one of them has a very distinct role, but that's good, because that means that you can use an archer in pretty much any type of squad, and they'll be able to fulfill a role that you need. It's not always going to be a sniper in any given squad, but you will have that capability. And just the fact that they can all hit the back line and potentially disrupt that is a good reason to do so and work them into your teams. If you have further questions about what types of units and squads any given Archer class should go into, by all means, ask in the comments. I'm also trying to get dedicated unit class build guides off the ground here, but it's slow going, so we'll see if I'm able to get that to happen. But if I do, you'll be able to get more information there. And I'm looking at potentially doing other videos like this as well for tanks, for cavalry, for DPS in general, things like that. So if there's a particular topic, a particular group of classes that you would like to see me cover, let me know that in the comments below, and I'll see if I can't get it squared away. With that said, though, thank you all so much for watching. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.